What concert have you been to that was a total disappointment? My nephew's 5th grade orchestra concert. Nobody's bow was going the same way. Half the players were just staring at the pages, paying zero attention to the conductor. One violinist dropped his bow in the middle of the performance and audibly yelled, "Crap, zero professionalism. No skills, absolute dogshit. Can't believe I wasted my Friday night for this." Kanye. It was at a small venue in Seattle after the college dropout came out. He was going to show up or not. He ranted about random shit more than he performed. Then some kids got into a scuffle in front of the stage during Jesus Walks and he absolutely lost his shit. That was the end of the show. Even though he had only done like 4 songs, his mental illness was pretty evident, even then. Metallica did a small show in Hollywood after the Grammys with Lady Gaga. Apparently James was still having a hissy fit due to his mic failure earlier in the night. No opening act. They went on way late, thanks James, raced through songs, didn't interact much with the crowd since there was no time, and cut songs from the original set list to make curfew. Total bummer because it was a small for them anyway 4K-person venue and tickets were not cheap. Carlos Santana a few years ago, most of the concert was focused on the new upcoming talent he's been mentoring, and I do respect that, but damn it, I went to the concert to see him. Kanye West, his opening acts were Rihanna, Nerd, and Luke Fiasco, all of whom were great and put on genuinely fun shows. Some backing tracks, while just walking around on stage with no presence at all, started ranting about how much he hates the media and how he's a better musician than John Lennon, and walked off stage. Arctic Monkeys, sadly, they had no energy, and it felt like I was watching a YouTube video and not a live performance. The bands that went on the stage before them, although completely unknown, made a better show. I've never been to a concert with that many people in the audience before that, and I was left feeling disappointed. Any rap show where the artist doesn't have a band and just raps along to a backing track with overblown bass is pretty bottom tier. Modest Mouse sucked. Very small venue in Vegas, and the lead singer was drunk as shit. Red Hot Chili Peppers around the By the Way Stadium Arcadium era. They were professionally competent. You couldn't say they sang poorly or had a memorable disaster or anything. They just seemed to have no chemistry with the audience, and the concert didn't go much longer than 90 minutes plus a brief encore. They were just going through the motions. Like they were good enough to still perform well, even just half-assing it, so that's exactly what they did. Strangely, it was Ozzy Osbourne. Rob Zombie opened for him and they killed it. After their performance, Ozzy was out of it and slurring lyrics horribly. I actually left early. 5-finger death punch, hit the stage, so drugged up they slobbered on Mick. Half sung 3 or 4 and left. I demanded money back, as did half the town. We were not refunded. Smashing Pumpkins around 2007, or rather, Billy Corgan and the 3 people he had hired to tour with him as Smashing Pumpkins. No stage presence at all. No interaction or even acknowledgement of the crowd. The set focused on new stuff rather than the hits people wanted to hear. They really didn't seem like they even wanted to be there. Alt J in Mumbai's for OC Heat in 2015. It was in an old warehouse that smelled entirely of 30,000 feet. I spent an hour in line trying to get in, even though I bought the VIP tickets 2 months in advance. Completely stopped going to concerts for a bit after that. I saw Dave Chappelle absolutely bomb in San Francisco around a dozen years ago. It was awesome. Van Morrison in the early 2000s. Stained was really bad when they were opening for Korn a couple years back. It was Jonathan Davis's 2nd or 3rd concert after getting COVID, and he alone had 10 times the energy any of the Stained guys had. Toby Keith years ago at a military base near me. He was so drunk and all over the place, but I was probably the only person to not enjoy it, as the crowd was almost as drunk as he was. I went to see a 3-build concert of Linkin Park, 30 Seconds to Mars, and AFI. The first 2 were incredible. AFI fucking sucked. I was so surprised. Ngumped. They were absolute garbage. Aerosmith, that one was a surprise. Years later, Machine Gun Kelly, that one wasn't a surprise. Counting Crows, granted like they were older, but they sounded terrible live. Fatboy Slim when I was in high school after he had his first hit album. The dude had like 4 or 5 opening DJs who were all skinny white bald guys. Every time a new guy came out the crowd thought it was him, but it wasn't. 3 hours later he finally came out, and no one gave a shit because they thought he was just another opening act. A ton of people left early into his set because it was midnight at that point on a Wednesday night. It felt like he was trolling the crowd. I went to a few shows right after Stone Temple Pilots reunited with Scott Weiland in 2008. He was slurring and forgetting lyrics. STP was flying the highest of their career from 9,902, and when they reunited, Scott Weiland just didn't have it anymore. Rascal Flatts concert, me and a friend noticed they were not even trying and were just lip-syncing, and this was around 2013 I think. Went to see Counting Crows and Matchbox 20 a few years ago. MB2O was great, but Counting Crows were awful, had no energy, just kinda stood there and sang a bit. When they did their finale of Mr. Jones, the dude didn't really sing any of the lyrics, he just awkwardly sang a few words then and didn't really even ask the audience to sing the rest. I don't know if the dude was high or if he just doesn't like that song, but they sucked. Pearl Jam, last summer, they closed Lollapalooza Sweden. It was incredibly anticlimactic. Been a fan since I was a kid in the late 90s. I was so excited, they basically showed up and that's it. Just seemed like they didn't want to be there. Shit. I went to see Lauryn Hill when she first started touring again like 15 years ago. Okay to 3 hours for her to come to the stage. The show was 45 minutes to an hour, and to top it all off, she was one of the worst live singers ever and her mic had some of the worst tuning I'd ever heard. She did a makeup concert because she wanted a show that was up to snuff. She took longer to come out and sounded just as bad. Trans-Siberian Orchestra in 2019. The first half of the show was their Christmas program and it was pretty good. The other half was other music they've done and I just thought it was meh. Not worth the ticket price. I agreed to see Justin Timberlake with my GF because how bad could it be, right? He's got a good voice in SNL skits. Fucking awful. Ed Sheeran. It was so boring. A flock of seagulls. You don't have that deep of a catalog of hits to be that much of a douche on stage. Just be happy we still recognize Iran. Citizen Cope. It was a yikes. He was hacking loogies into the mix, sang the same song 3 times. HIM a few years ago in Turkey. It started raining. The stage got flooded. The band got super angry. Left stage in anger. Concert ruined. I don't blame them though. No one would want to be electrocuted on stage, especially during gloomy songs like Gone with the Sin, but it doesn't change the fact that it was the worst concert I've been to. Amy Winehouse is probably the worst I'd be seen. Admittedly, she was one of the support acts, no necessarily who I went to see, but still. She kind of stood there slurring through songs and wobbling about, had a rant about Blake, and that was it. It was kind of sad really because it was clearly the drugs and alcohol, but that doesn't make it any less disappointing. Black Veil Brides, lead singer was sick to the point you couldn't even hear him sing. Even with a microphone, it was almost as if he was lip-singing into it. Drums were so loud you could barely hear the guitarists. Bassist was almost non-existent. That honestly killed my love for the band after that. Maroon 5 started about an hour late, sang without acknowledging the crowd, and by the end they just said "Love You Mexico" and left. Phoebe Bridgers, she was fantastic, but her fan base is insufferable. Teens who have made being a Phoebe fan their entire personality, and with absolutely zero concert etiquette. You could barely hear her over them screaming out every lyric to prove they were her biggest fan. Dad took me to Barney in concert, but the people in front of us kept obstructing my view. Shitty time for all. Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Just kidding, they were all awesome. Hart Jones Jet Cheap Trick a few years ago. Not a shadow of their former selves, very disappointed. Megadeth in Oregon about 10 years ago. The sound was crap, and Dave Mustaine gave the same listless performance he has become known for. Slayer played after and blew the entire crowd away. Muse at a beautiful outdoor venue, but no crowd interaction, not even Hello X, no encore. You got the feeling they just wanted to get through it. I'm older, but here it goes. Marcy Playground. Yes, they were one-hit wonders, but they were so bad in concert. So very bad. The only saving grace is that I worked for a radio station so I didn't have to pay. Luckily, Everclear was the palate cleanser. 20 years later, it still stands out as the worst. Kiss in the late 80s, I think. It was their no makeup or stage show phase. Never been so bored. Marilyn Manson's set at Download Festival 2009 was one of the worst performances I've ever seen. I've seen kids who've only been playing a few months put on a better show. The Mars Volta in Phoenix at the Dodge Theater in 2008. They were one of my favorite bands at the time, known for excellent shows. They played for less than an hour, zero energy, and they just left at the end like a bunch of divas. I spent a lot on their vinyl, sold all of it a few days later, and never bought anything from them again. Styx at the Summerfest grounds in Milwaukee, 1998. This was the last tour when Dennis Daying was a member of the band, and one of the last shows of that tour. They were angry at each other and Dennis was all out of fucks to give about it. It was completely unprofessional on both Dennis and Tommy Show's part. About half of the audience left. I had seen them play before, so I knew what they could do when they were dialed in. Matchbox 20.